All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Black Excellence in Tech panel here at Codeup, first of many. My name is Jeanice Freeman. I am the Student Experience Specialist here at Codeup and also your moderator for today. And with me, I have three of Codeup's alums, Bridget Mills, Xavier Carter, and Jada Shipp. How is everyone today?
I'm doing real well. How about yourself?
Doing good.
Doing good.
Good. I'm glad. And thank you all for being here too and dedicating some time to talk about Black excellence and, challenges and advantages and some positivity as well that, we face in the tech industry. So I want to get started, to give everyone a chance to talk and tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, maybe a little bit about how you got started and, your program and your time that was also spent here at Codeup. So Bridget, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Well, like she said, I'm Bridget Mills. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I was a part of the series cohort back in May of 2019. I work for VIA Metropolitan Transit in San Antonio as an application developer. I was interested in, I did the web dev program at Codeup, and I was interested in software development because a long time ago, I worked at a courthouse, and it had a very old system, and they brought in a team of software developers to gather our requirements and stuff like that. So I was just like, wow, like I never heard of anybody doing this before. That sounds like a pretty cool job. And at the time I was actually studying for the LSAT, but like it really interested me. So I was like, how can I get into software development? And so I ended up I had already graduated from college, but I went back to school and I found an IT degree that specialized in software engineering. So I took that. It was only a couple of coding classes. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Nobody's gonna hire me to do this. And I got an IT specialist job. And then actually a relative of mine was telling me about coding boot camp programs and stuff like that. So after I moved to San Antonio, I looked up some different ones in the area and I found Codeup to be the best looking option. And so I joined Codeup. Oh, and let me just say how I got to San Antonio. My husband's in the military. So I was also looking for a career that would travel with me. And it's been perfect so far. Because actually I just moved to Atlanta and VIA asked me to stay on. So I'm able to work remotely right now.
Congrats on that. And thank you. Thank you for being here. Xavier, I'm kind of going in the order of everyone on my screen. So
I'm Xavier Carter. And I currently work at a car insurance startup called Loop Insurance. And I primarily focused on doing telematics analysis, some machine learning algorithms, as well as data manipulation and like creating dashboards for our growth marketing. I got to Codeup because I've always had a knack for coding. I've been coding since I was 14. Back when I used to create animations for my friends, I wanted to find a way to share those so we can share with each other. So when I was 14, I looked up how to design a website. I created a website just using simple HTML, CSS, and I was able to create a website. And with that breeded my love for coding because, the community that I created, we involved in, it created something that was really unique. So that's what started my journey into coding. I then went to school for software engineering at Arizona State University. And in the middle of that, I realized that I was losing that sense of passion that I had for coding because it was all textbook work. There was no passion projects in a way. But in the midst of me doing that, I also found out that I fell in love with data. And I took those two feelings that I had of not having a passion and falling in love with data to then take it to Codeup once I moved to San Antonio back in 2018. after a couple of years of being here, I decided that I wanted to pick up coding again, pick up databasing and things like that again. And how can I, make those two things coincide? And I found out what data science was. So I actually applied for the data science cohort, and I was part of the Florence cohort. We graduated back in August of 2021, and that's kind of how I am now and where I am now.
Great, thank you so much. And Jada?
Hi everyone, I'm Jada Ship. Currently, I am a technical product manager at WellMed, and I support the team that updates and innovates the risk management model, which is how we can tell how sick a patient is or how sick a patient is going to be with predictive modeling, and adjust what benefits are available to them according to the results of that model. And so I was in the Curie cohort, which graduated in, let me look at my plaque here, May of 2022, of 2020, sorry, May of 2020. And so I kind of stumbled my way into data science. I was a public health major in undergrad, and I was pre-med, and then I became an EMT, all with the hopes of, becoming a doctor. But the more I looked into what healthcare and medicine really is and what it does for the community, I realized that being a doctor wouldn't help me affect the change that I wanted, that it was really more about the policies and the guidelines that are issued from on high, that help the doctors make their decisions. So I decided that that was the space I wanted to intervene. And, just from the good old Google machine and bunch of billboards and a good recommendation from a dear friend of mine, I found my way to Codeup. And so that was kind of all she wrote.
Great, thank you. I just think it's so fascinating, the different backgrounds and journeys of how you all got to where you are today. And also how broad the tech industry is, and learning about the different positions that you fill. I think it's great. And it's really good as well for the audience to kind of hear what it is you can do within the tech industry. So thank you all for that. So I want to be mindful of time, so I want to jump right into it. And so while we sit and we unpack what it's like to be Black professionals in the tech industry, I want to start a little bit by talking about maybe some of the challenges that you've all faced while on your journey. So a little bit, the underrepresentation of African Americans in tech really dates back to the 1970s. And so from a report I was reading, it talked a little bit about some of the challenges and the barriers that are faced for African Americans in the tech industry. So I wanted to ask you all, what are some challenges that you have faced while on your journey to where you are today? And we can continue in the same order, since that makes it a little bit more easier.
Okay, so that's me first. One challenge that I faced is, and not at my current position, because I was also an IT specialist, but I felt like people don't really know what you're capable of, or kind of pretty much what you're capable of, and they kind of try to, sometimes I feel like a token Black person, like just for diversity's sake. It's like, well, I don't really know what you could do, but I kind of just want to show everybody that we have you here. So I was like, I could do more than just be here. So I faced that before. One time, actually, when I was an IT specialist, let's just say my manager, that wasn't her position, but my manager, she would hardly speak to me, like, unless I was in there fixing something for her. And it was like very minimal conversation. And we had somebody come down from like the national organization, and she was looking everywhere, like frantically trying to find me to introduce me to this person from the national organization. I'm just like, okay. And even the person she introduced me to was just like, why am I meeting her right now? And I was just so lost. I was just like, okay, this lady's never talked to me before today, and now she's running all over trying to get me to meet somebody. And I think at the time their mission was about diversity and inclusion. So I was just like, wow, that's interesting.
And I can also kind of attest to that in terms of some of the challenges that I've faced in this field, or some of those microaggressions that we normally get in regards to, oh, you do this, or you're a data scientist, or you're a software engineer, or I didn't know that was something that you guys could do in a way, and it kind of, in my opinion, showed me like that unconscious bias that is kind of like rooted in the industry and in many industries is our the kind of like our misrepresentation, our misunderstanding of what we're genuinely capable of. So yeah, that's kind of what I get on slight basis.
Yeah, that I can definitely co-sign both of those sentiments. It does happen. There's, at the previous company I worked for, there was some, it came all the way from the very highest position, kind of those microaggressions and really not understanding what it's like to have an actually diverse, development team or just IT team in general, and it's also certainly just a barrier to entry in the first place, because there's a persistent idea that this is not for us. This is not something we do. This is not a job that is like talked about, just as a potential. So first you have to break the mindset of, no, I can do this. And then once you get in, it's kind of a constant, see, I will show you that I can do this. So that's definitely there.
Absolutely. And thank you all for sharing that. I wanted to ask, because it is something that's seen, within the tech industry, and across many different industries as well. So what are some ways, and Jada, you spoke a little bit to it, but what are some ways that you've overcome some of those microaggressions and some of those challenges that you faced in the workplace?
For me, my style, I solve all of my problems with over communication. So it starts at a small level with making connections with, the folks that you are going to be, in the trenches with. And making sure that you communicate your ideas, make sure you're not holding back in terms of asking questions, and just really occupying your space to the fullest. It's a battle to not shrink. And I find that when I make sure that I do that, folks kind of react to me the way I would want them to.
As for me, I'm a little bit different than Jada. I'm very quiet by nature. I do ask questions. That's one thing. If I don't understand something, I definitely ask questions. Even at Codeup, that was my biggest thing. Everybody's like, how do you have anxiety? And you're always raising your hand, because I need to know how to do this stuff. That's why. But I think I try to overcome it by proving that I'm capable. I find out like what the requirements are, what is our end goal, and I show you. I read a lot, so I ask questions. I'll ask for help if I need it, and I try to prove, like, look what I can do. I'm not just here. I can contribute.
And I guess my biggest approach on how I overcome this obstacle is to kind of remember why I got into the field in the first place. By keeping hold of like my true mission of building community is my primary goal in this field, and really doesn't matter how people see or view me, as long as I can stay true to what I set out to do in the beginning. So that's primarily how I focus on, overcoming that obstacle.
Thank you all for sharing that. I think it's really important for everyone to hear, different ways, especially some of our young Black professionals trying to get into the tech industry, to really get a better understanding of how you could overcome some of these challenges that you may face, because let's face it, we will face it. We will come across them while trying to climb that ladder and get into our industry of choice. So I wanted to kind of unpack one in particular, which Xavier brought up, which was on unconscious bias. and really just kind of talk a little bit to that. So there was a report that talked a lot about how some of the participants, they really found unconscious bias to be a role as to why there was mistreatment in their field, along with the lack of diversity. So I just wanted to hear a little bit about your thoughts about unconscious bias and maybe a little bit of advice of how that could be eliminated.
I think unconscious bias can be lessened by more exposure to people of color that these are viable career paths. Because like Jada was saying, I didn't know that this was even an option. Like, this is not something that I heard about in high school. You know, I just so happened to come across it. We use all this software every day and technology every day. And I know a lot of us don't think like we can do this. So I feel like if representation matters, if we have more people in the tech industry, then there wouldn't be so much bias, because it would be common to see us there. So I think introducing it earlier, that we could have more people in the tech industry of color.
Absolutely.
And in my personal experience with the tech industry, I sided with a company, and I signed with a company that really values inclusion and diversity from the very beginning. As you can see, it's deeply rooted in their core. So I don't have a lot of experience in the tech industry in terms of like mistreatment and unconscious bias, but the field that I currently work in InsurTech, has a variety of biases that I wasn't exposed to until I started working for this company. Such as there are factors that play a role into how your coverage is for, like, let's say car insurance, how they actually quote you on your price, such as like your credit score, your income, like where you went to school, whether or not you're a homeowner, things like this that really don't have to do with how you drive, but more about who you are. And people who usually tend to fall into that category of, not being able to check off those boxes tend to be minorities. So at insurance's core, there is a lot of unconscious bias. Maybe it wasn't designed to be it wasn't designed to be biased, but because of how both Black and other minorities tend to fall into these categories, it creates bias. So, I mean, my insurance company is focusing on, getting rid of those unconscious biases. And I think it's important that in order for us to overcome like that unconscious bias, we have to, really look into like the root of, how was this company or how was this field established, what it was established on, and the rules that it was founded on, so that way we can, overturn those for everyone. That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah, and honestly, I think we have to tackle it from an internal and an external point of view. Internally, like within the tech company, push the education more, push the opportunities more, hire more, promote more, mentor more, Black people in particular, but minorities in general, as a way of cultivating talent and making this a place where it's more comfortable to just show up and do our job, which is all we wanted to do in the first place. And then externally, it's important that unconscious bias is weeded out just on a social level, because with the whole working remote thing, being on camera versus being off camera is like a big fight, particularly between IT and business, right? The business always wants to be on camera, IT always wants to be off camera. And so I was, witness to a moment where a business representative was really forcing folks to be on camera, and she happened to be a Black girl, and she said that she didn't have her hair done. And for those of you who don't know, when you're a Black girl and you don't have your hair done, it's a big deal. So, and she's usually on camera. This day she wasn't, and he really like stopped the meeting and, all eyes on her until she turned it on. And then she just wasn't herself, for the rest of the meeting. And that can take a toll on you when you're just trying to do your job, when you have to battle those things too. And it's a toll just to watch it happen, even though it didn't happen to me. So socially, we have to understand each other better, and that will translate into what we do, within tech.
Y'all made some really, really great points. Because it's really important. And Jada, I like how you said it starts internally and externally, and being able to create, those opportunities on an internal level within organizations to where you are creating and increasing that diversity. So I kind of want to dive like a little bit more into that, because we do have some leadership as well that's in our audience too. And so, I want to talk to that and how that curve can shift and how we can bring more of these opportunities to our young Black individuals, but also people of color in general, to Bridget's point about starting early, and making sure that we're offering these opportunities, whether, these organizations are partnering with schools or, creating different opportunities of like internships and things for our minority, our youth and those wanting to get into the industry. So what are some more ways that you think leadership can be more involved in creating more diversity and inclusion? Because also that inclusion piece is really important, especially for those of us that are already in the industry.
Well, I really agree with what you said about bringing programs to the schools, because I think that's where it really starts, especially at high schools, when a lot of people are trying to figure out what their next step is. I think it would be great to even have a program like a semester in school that kind of introduces Black kids to tech, and lets them know that college is not the only way. I went to college right after high school, and I didn't know what I wanted to do then. So I feel like starting early and creating programs in school and internships would really, really help. Just the exposure. I think it starts there.
And I definitely agree with that. I think starting early is probably the best way to overcome, getting over that diversity inclusion situation that we currently have. The sooner they start, the sooner they, can gather those skills, and then once they gather those skills, companies and people can reach out and say that they can see that there's actual people in these fields of color that actually want to partake in these endeavors when it comes to tech. So I think starting early, making sure that we build a proper foundation for students and the young individuals that just want to get their careers up, that they have a great starting place, and that we make sure that they have outlets so they can be used. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think from a leadership perspective, there needs to be more intention about hiring the right person for the right thing. And what I mean by that is, like, I was involved in an inclusivity and diversiveness and diversity seminar, and everyone who was up there talking about diversity was not diverse. And we're talking, this is 10 people who are in charge of diversity and inclusion within the broader company, and none of you fit the category. So that there needs to be a little bit more, introspection about what we're doing, what is our message, what really is our goal, and before we even broadcast it to the rest of the world, we need to look at ourselves and make sure that we're checking that box. And now that's one of the things I will applaud Codeup for is even though while I was there in my cohort, I was the only one of me, and it was also during a very trying time during all of the George Floyd protests and stuff like that. Codeup, I expressed sort of feelings about that to Codeup, and Codeup responded very well. just with hiring more and doing what they can and, talking about it more and being more upfront. So it's possible. There are companies that are like Codeup who do it, and who pivot very quickly and very well and upfront and obvious. So it's not like it's not possible. It's just somebody has to care enough to look at themselves and pull it off.
Absolutely, absolutely, and be able to get comfortable to create that change too, because I think that's a lot of it is a lot of people don't want to have those hard conversations or take a look in the mirror and look at themselves as well to be able to change. So thank you all for sharing that. I wanted to talk a little bit to the skills, like Xavier, you brought up about being able to help with, creating those skills that are needed. So I wanted to ask, what are some skills that you felt, transferable skills that you felt are needed and that helped you within your positions now or positions before, but within the tech industry?
I would say one of the biggest things that's helped me, and I believe they push this on us at Codeup too, is knowing how to learn. Like, that is a very big thing, because you never know what scenario could come up in development. You have somebody like, hey, I need you to create this. And you're like, I have no idea how to create that, but I'm sure that it's been done or something similar has been done, because it's nothing new under the sun. But you have to know how to go out there, find the information and apply it to your situation. And I noticed, like, even with some of my fellow cohort students who maybe didn't make it all the way to the end, that was something I noticed, that they just couldn't pick up how to learn it. Like, they didn't know how to get the answer. None of us knew it to begin with, but you have to learn how to learn. And another thing is being flexible, especially in this job, because you can be focused on one project and you really want to get it done and your head is in it all day or all week, and then next thing you know, management comes and like, hey, this is priority now. So you have to be able to switch quickly. And I think that's very important. That's something that I brought, flexible, and I've always been good at learning.
I think probably one of the best skills to practice is trying your best to be as resourceful as possible, especially if you're trying to get into like data science or data analytics. To be honest, that perfect data set doesn't exist. That the data that you'll probably need is going to come from a variety of sources. Sources that you didn't even think might work together. You'll have to combine and manipulate that data in a way that answers those questions that you need answered. So it's best to, figure out, just exactly what skills you have to gather that information and be as resourceful as possible. So I think that's one of the big things that I've learned and I've tried to utilize on the job.
As far as transferable skills, definitely communication is important at every level, like within your development team, across teams, from IT to business to the customer, all at every level. Communication is important. I second what Bridget was saying about learning how to learn and problem solving. That's going to serve you no matter what kind of role you land. Also, making sure that you're fearless about failure. The first time you write this line of code, it will probably fail, unless you're Zach, he's a wizard, but that's different. You're probably not gonna get it on the first try, and you need to not be intimidated by that really long error message. And you have to put fingers to the keyboard and figure it out. You can't spend all your time just trying to copy paste. You may just have to play around with it yourself. So, fearlessness in the face of failure and, learning how to learn and communicating, those are all three transferable skills for any role in tech.
It helps if I unmute myself. Chronicles of Zoom. Thank you for that, though. Thank you for sharing. the different skills, especially transferable skills that are utilized and needed, especially in the tech industry. And I think I wanted to shine some light on that, because that's one thing that I love here about Codeup, is that they really try to embed that into the program and working with students on how they can develop those skills. So I wanted to ask a quick question, because from the chat, because it actually kind of goes with a little bit about learning and how to learn, right? So someone wants to know, what's the best answer to how to learn, and what's your secret? What worked best for you?
I would say reading comprehension. That's a big thing, because sometimes you have to go to documentation and you really have to dive in there and figure it out. And I think another thing is, I think Jada said it, being able to know that something's not going to work, and you might just have to play around with it. You might not find the answer, but if you find something similar, you have to be able to fit things to your needs. I think that's really important. And what was I going to say? I had a brain freeze. Okay, come back. My mind went completely blank.
I think in regards to answer that question, for me personally, the best way I learned to learn how to learn was to really think about, let's think about what we learned and understand that Google is your best friend. Google is going to be your best friend in any type of tech industry. Did you guys lose me? I think my connection might have skipped. If not, okay. So, so I think the biggest way that I learned to learn was how to understand that Google is your best friend. Google is going to, it's going to help you not only answer those questions when you get that large chunk of code where it's like, I don't know what that error message means at all. And then it also is going to raise your curiosity in regards to, this wasn't in the curriculum, but I'm very curious on if this approach is possible. So it's about extending your horizons, about like when you learn something, what are some of those questions that weren't answered in the either the documentation or weren't answered in the project that you were given. I think it's important that you take those questions, don't just sit on them, look them up, research them, and I think you're going to learn a lot.
I would say the best way for me that I learned how to learn was to get good at breaking things down into their smallest component. If you have an ask, don't just take the ask and run. Spend some time figuring out exactly what are you trying to accomplish at its most basic level. The solution to transportation, there's a bunch of them, right? We have buses, we have trains, we have planes, we have cars, we have roller skates, everything. So, but the question is, how do you get from one place to another place? It all solves the same question. So whenever you have a new ask, I would say to take time and figure out exactly what the route is. And you'll find once you do, then you'll naturally have a few places where you can go investigate from there. And that will foster further learning. Like Xavier is saying, oh, this sparks curiosity. Let me go look up how I would do it this way. A car is really complicated compared to like a scooter, right? But they serve the same thing. But somebody had to be curious enough to figure out how to put that together.
Okay. I'm glad you said that, Jada, about breaking it down into smaller components, because that's kind of what I was thinking in my head. Pretty much keep it simple. I've run into people that when something's not working, they're just like trying everything under the sun. It's just like, I have to get back to the root of what the first issue was to begin with, like break it down into smaller sections. Like, what was I first trying to accomplish? And how can I fix this that leads into this, that leads into this? And then the whole thing will work, not just like, it's all broken, what do I do? And freak out and, then start doing a lot of stuff that just does not help at all. Like I said, there's nothing new under the sun. So more than likely somebody has had a problem like yours or a similar problem. You can look on Stack Overflow, it's probably been asked like 100 times. And you just really have to think like, okay, what is the first step? Go step by step until you know, solve the whole thing, especially with development.
Absolutely. Thank you all for sharing your insights on that. I want to ask too, when it comes to the work that you do and some of the skills that we talked about and some of the transferable skills, I wanted to talk a little bit about being able to work with others or work on a team. Do you find that you are able to do that a lot? And how is it as well being in, you know, in any type of position, if you were the only person of color within there, how did you ever feel when having to work in a team or work with someone?
I feel like I've gotten a lot better. I'm here today, but I'm going to be honest. When I first got into software development or got interested in it, one of the reasons was because I felt like I would be able to work more alone because I'm a very quiet and like to myself person. And when I got this position, I realized, even though I work on a small team, there's a lot of communication that has to happen. And I'm not the type to kind of just jump in there. I'm more like wait until the end, see what everybody has to say, and then think about it, and then I'll put my opinion out. But I think the biggest thing is to not stay quiet. And that's very difficult for me, especially if I feel like I can contribute. I'm just like, well, you know, they got it. But then I have to be like, no, like what I'm thinking is valuable, and I need to say it because it could help. And so I really have to push myself, even working on a small team, to make my voice heard. And my manager helps with that too. She's like, Bridget, say something. I'm just like, okay, I'll wait till it quiet down.
And I can kind of relate to that in a way where I work on a team that has pretty established data scientists and data analysts that are currently already there, that have been creating projects and creating machine learning. I'm doing more data manipulation than me. I'm working with the telematics data a little longer. So, you know, asking those questions, you know, making sure that you're not quiet is very important in regards to, you know, making sure that you can contribute in ways that maybe somebody hasn't previously thought about. So that's kind of my approach in working with teams.
Yeah, I find that whenever I join a new team, I had to break myself out of that feeling like, oh, well, they know what they're doing. Let me not, you know. But also, it's weird. It's a weird dichotomy. As much as I feel like, oh, they know what they're doing, a lot of folks don't know. There's a lot of I don't know as response to your question. So, and that knowing that has empowered me to just ask my question, whether I feel like it's silly or not. I can't tell you the number of times where that question has been like, I think maybe we need to figure that out first before we move forward. Sometimes your question is the exact right thing. And if you hide too much, you know, thinking that other people will know because they're the lead developer or they have 15 years of writing SQL or whatever, a lot of times if you hide that, you're holding up progress. So ask your question. If it's simple, they'll answer it. Now you know, and you move on. If it's the key, then now you look like you're paying attention. So just ask your question. Either way, it's a positive outcome.
Absolutely. Thank you all for sharing that. Because that's one of the things that we really try to focus on. And with some of the students watching, I wanted you all to be able to leave like a little piece of advice when it comes to that as well. But speaking of advice, because I do want to be mindful of time and we do have some questions in the chat. I wanted to ask, you know, what's a piece of advice you could leave for our students and especially for emerging Black individuals in tech and even some of our students of color? I know there's a lot, but
right, there's a lot. I would say, number one, you're capable. You can do it. Don't give up. Number two, I would say, if you don't know something or if you don't understand, ask. Because like Jada said, you'll be surprised, especially when you get your job, at what people don't know. Like you'll think like, oh, they've been doing it forever. That imposter syndrome is real. And I started to become aware that like, hey, these people might know how to throw terms out and this and that, but when it comes to making something work, like they aren't able to, complete the job. So I would say ask questions, especially during Codeup. Ask questions. Don't let the class pass you by. If you don't understand something, make it known. Like I said, I do not like speaking in public at all, but my hand was raised every time that we're about to move on and I didn't know something. I sit in the back of the class, raise my hand, like, can you please go over this again? Because this is your life, this is your career, and take advantage of all the people there who can help you now. I mean, I'm sure there'll be good people on your job too, but that's what Codeup's for. That's what they're there for, to help you. So take advantage.
I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give is two things. Is one, be very mission driven in a way where if you align yourself with a true mission behind why you want to get into tech, and you can align yourself with companies that also share that mission, it's going to make that process a lot smoother. I would also look at looking at companies that really have inclusion and diversity rooted in its core. You'll see this in their staff, like awareness campaigns, mission statements, and they're not waiting for bad things to happen for us to say, oh, well, we're inclusive and things like that. You can genuinely see when it's rooted at their core based off of the people that they've hired before you, things that they have done, awareness campaigns, things like what we're doing right now with Codeup. This is not something that was, this is something that can show that their diversity and inclusion, that doesn't feel like it's forced in a way. So you want to really align yourself with companies that give off that diversity and inclusion, but they do it at their core.
One piece of advice, certainly piggybacking off of what Bridget was saying about what to do while you're in Codeup, and this comes courtesy of Ryan Orsinger when we were doing a checkbook application and I was about to cry. It was because I was confused and I didn't know how to get unconfused because I didn't want to ask a question. And he told me to own this experience, that this is for you, engage, like forget everybody else who's there and whoever like picked that concept up really quickly and now is flying with it. And you're still like, what do you mean? Forget all about that. Make sure that you're getting what you can get out of it. And then secondly, get yourself a mentor. I have 4. I think there's no limit on how many mentors you can get. Stephen Salas encouraged me just to literally essentially cold call people on LinkedIn. I attended a couple of seminars or webinars. The folks that were saying things that resonated with me, I found them on LinkedIn. I messaged them, and to my surprise, all 4 of them were like, yes, I would love to be your mentor. That was 2 years ago. We still talk today. And they have helped me get job interviews. They have helped me understand salary negotiation. They've helped me with a whole lot of things, or, even just realizing that I can do more than just do what was taught at Codeup, in terms of having your hands on the keyboard and being an analyst or being a developer or something like that. Now I'm a technical product manager, which I never thought I would do such a thing at all. But I'm bossy and I like to plan stuff, so it fits. So get yourself a mentor who can, show those things to you, and don't be afraid to do it.
Thank you all for sharing that. And I'm really glad that you brought up the mentorship aspect of things, because I think that's so important. And it's something that, isn't really talked about the process and how you actually go out there and find yourself a mentor. So one question that actually comes from the chat that I wanted to ask, how do you know that they're right for you?
I feel like if they are willing to teach you and they're willing to understand that you're new to this and not judgmental and patient and not a know-it-all. Like, oh, I can't believe you don't. It's like, well, sorry, are you gonna help me or not? And I think I found that in some people I work with, and I feel like in a mentor you should find someone who is where you're trying to be or closer to where you're trying to be. Because I not only look for somebody who does what I do, I kind of look for people who know something that I wasn't taught either. Like I know when I first started this position, I mean, it really wasn't about SQL, even though it's a full stack position, but there's a guy who works there, it's like a SQL guru, and he's like really great at it. And so I was just like, that's a skill that I would like to have too. It's not my primary job, but I kind of would ask him, can I sit with you while you're working? And he was very helpful and very patient, and so I'm more prone to people like that. And not only that, it's weird. The last panel I was on with Codeup, somebody actually in the audience reached out to me. I'm just like, how can you? I don't know anything. I just got into it. But you'll be surprised what you can help other people and mentor right out of Codeup too, because there are a lot of people out there who are looking for a way into tech and they don't know how to get started. And just us sharing our experience can help somebody else. So if anybody needs a mentor, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll do the best I can. I'll be honest with you about what I've experienced and try to help any way I can.
Yeah. I also think that one of the best ways to find a mentor is to find that person that doesn't give you all the answers. That's going to kind of let you discover and trial and error a lot of things, and then advise you on maybe why that failed or things like that, because it allows you to not only gain that experience, but have a eye out on maybe why that failed. So I think having like a person that's knowledgeable, but isn't ready to just give you a whole bunch of information and hand you off, but is patient with you and is going to talk to you and talk you through situations that you're going through and possible approaches that you can take. Can be very impactful to your career. So, find that person that's gonna take that time to do that for you.
Thank you. And I don't know, Jada, if you had it, you spoke a little bit to it. So, okay, perfect. So I wanted to be able to ask some of the questions from the chat because there are some really good questions in here. So I'm going to bring us back a little bit to the beginning of the conversation when we talked a little bit about challenges and microaggressions, that unconscious bias and things that are faced. So one of the questions are there aspects of your identity that you feel you need to keep separate from the workplace that may be valuable to a company that you are not comfortable expressing? And to what extent do you express them?
That is a really, 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 really good question. I think because, being Black and being in the Black community, there's this thing that we do. It's called, in a sense, called code switching, where we kind of change our tones and mannerisms based off of who we're interacting with. In my specific field, I guess, I work with a company where my co-CEOs are both a Dominican man and a white woman. So in terms of diversity and inclusion, it's all the way from the top to the bottom. So I never really feel like personally, because of how diverse and inclusive we are, that I can't express myself in a way that's different. So this is why it's very important that I bring it back to finding that company that's going to really allow you to be who you are, both in the workplace and outside of the workplace at the same time. It's very important that you align yourself with that, because then you won't have that feeling of having to feel like you have to change yourself for your role. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Does anyone else want to add anything or?
Yeah, I'll say that Do I code switch sometimes? I code switch a lot less than I used to. Be yourself, because being yourself is how you got here in the first place, right? So don't feel like you have to put on a whole persona just to go to work. We spend a lot of time at work, so pretending to be a version of yourself will become exhausting. Find whatever level of you you're comfortable with and be that. And if the company has a problem with you being who you are, then like Xavier is saying, that's not the company for you, and you need to be on your toes and look for your next opportunity. I would say that a good company will appreciate you being who you are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with both of them. I've never done code switching. This is me all the time, every day, very monotone. This is me. And I've run into situations where people thought this me wasn't the real me because it wasn't what they expected me to be. And it's like, no, this is me. Like, I don't have to be my real self. This is my real self. I'm not what you think I should be. Let's just put it like that. I'm not that person. I'm not that person from TV, from Instagram. This is me. So I think that's important. Be yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Another question I wanted to ask from the chat. So at your companies, and Xavier, you spoke a little bit to the diversity and inclusion within your company. So how are the policies for diversity and equality? Is it more like check the box? And if so, how can you as an employee for that company help change those policies?
In my brief understanding with how kind of like our hiring process goes, there is no, the biggest box to check is whether you align with the mission that the company is given. Mm-hmm. So that by only allowing to check one box, you don't care about who is who's basically being hired in a way. Mm-hmm. So there's like a natural diversity and inclusion, if that makes sense. Because if we don't care about who you look or how you look and who you are, if you're able to do the job, it doesn't matter how you look, what your orientation is, like anything that would distinguish you as different. It doesn't matter as long as you're able to you align with the mission and you're able to do that to the best of your abilities. So having less boxes to check is probably better, if that makes sense.
That's good.
I would say for the company I work for, via Metropolitan Transit, they're very diverse, like all the way up to their executive management team, men, women, people of color, and in every department is diverse. And they make it a point to have, surveys and, diversity workshops. And I really feel like that anyone, like Xavier said, anyone who's capable of performing a job, they have a chance there and they have a voice there. That's why I really enjoy working for them.
Thank you. Okay, so next question. And I think this goes back a little bit to where, and I think it was Bridget talked a little bit about feeling like the diversity hire. And I feel like maybe we all have felt that in a way. I know I have. So how have you combated that feeling like the strategic hire versus being hired because of your potential and contributions?
Showing what I could do. I know I work hard. I know I produce good work, and I think that is the biggest thing that's helped me. Mm-hmm. Is putting forth a lot of effort.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I guess that makes a lot of sense. I was kind of thinking the same thing. Whether you're as weird as it sounds, whether you're the strategic hire or not, you're hired. Mm-hmm. So you need to make sure that you're putting in, whether like I said, whether you're the strategic hire or not, if you're putting in that effort, if you're doing everything that you need to do to the best of your abilities, I guess how they perceive you can change. Because you're never too sure whether you're that strategic hire or not, but they know if you were the strategic hire or not, but they'll also know that the effort that you put in to make your contributions will be seen. So
Right.
don't focus primarily on being that strategic hire or not. Just if you're hired, do it to the best of your ability. And if you were the strategic hire, then you'll alleviate that naturally.
That part, exactly. It does not matter if, and some people are bold enough to say, oh, you're the affirmative action hire. It doesn't matter. That's your job. Your check's gonna clear. The expectation of you is there. So get in there and get after it.
Absolutely. Thank you. I think I have enough time for one or two more questions. There are some really great questions in here. So one question, what's something, no matter how big or small, that made you feel welcomed on a team?
Oh, so I have a good one. So every other Friday at the end of the day, we have what we call a thank you meeting. And pretty much what this meeting is we all get together and we literally thank each other for anything that has been helped, whether it's big, small, massive, minuscule, anything that you feel like you want to share and give that thank you to. We take time aside to thank each other on our accomplishments for the week. So just on my first week, this was like completely new to me. I come from a background of like industry, like what is the word? Mechanical industry. Mm-hmm. So in regards to like good job, like thank yous, that's not a thing. So this was a very it's very different when I got here and I got my first thank you. Like, hey, thank you for asking those questions. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. It really made me feel like, even though my accomplishments were small, that they were important and they impacted the company in a positive way. So I think that's probably one of my biggest, that's one of the biggest things.
Love that.
I think one of the biggest things that made me feel appreciated was kind of like I said, my manager now, she knows I'm kind of quiet, but she'll like message me on Teams like, hey, say what you want to say. And it makes me feel like, she knows that I have valuable input and, she wants me to put myself out there in whatever meeting we're in. So we could be with the executive team or just, the developers, and, she'll help me to get out of my own way. Like, hey, I know you have something to add here.
Yeah, definitely having a good manager that knows you, took the time to understand you, and to, commend you when you do a good job. To Xavier's point, kind of a blend of it, what Xavier and Bridget is saying, acknowledge when good work is done, and having some, a specific point of contact, a person that you can get good feedback from, also just eases you in and makes it easier for you to do your job.
Great. Thank you all so much. Thank you all for being here, sharing your stories, speaking to the audience on, challenges, but also the positive that has happened to you all within the tech industry. And so lastly, because I feel like this is a really great question, and it kind of goes back to your experience as getting into the tech industry. How did you prepare yourself, and specifically for, the boot camp and becoming successful and being successful in graduating? What were some of your preparations?
I personally had somewhat of a head start. I was already doing software engineering as a degree. So in terms of like getting ready for Codeup, the process was fairly simple, and I wouldn't say simple. It's definitely challenging, but I just had somewhat of a head start because there was a lot of information that I've already digested before. But I think it's also very important that you take that time to really, because they'll let you know, like when you're getting started with Codeup, what are the minimum requirements, and then there's a lot of practice that goes into it before. Really genuinely take that time to understand it, because you're going to build, that is your foundation, and you're going to build off of that moving forward. So you want to make sure your foundation is extremely strong before you start building that house. That makes sense.
Thank you. Thanks. Did anyone want to add anything else?
I think you have to have a reason or a why. So I think that was a big thing for me in completing, Codeup, because when I started, I had 2 very small children, and that another thing, having a strong support system, and having a mission, having an end goal. I knew I wanted to graduate from Codeup, and so I had to send my kids to stay with my parents for a little while because, it was a lot on me. I was in San Antonio. I don't have any family in San Antonio, being a military spouse. And, I knew that a big reason I was doing it was for my kids and for their futures. And so they could see, a different career path that they could take one day. And so one of the things I prepared, I sent them there, and I made time to study. I made time to go to the study groups after class and really practice, because I don't know, for the students there and there now, the first couple of weeks, it's like, what did I get myself into? So I fully was like, I don't know if I could do this, but you have to remember why you wanted to do it in the first place, and do everything you can to reach that goal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would say don't shortchange yourself, in terms of preparing. If you need to go to they have workshops and stuff that happen. If one is happening while you're gearing up to, starting your program, you should go. If you're in the program that has pre-work, don't, those answers are out there. Don't just copy paste them. Make sure that you understand. I would say find, once you're in and you're early on in, find someone that you can talk with, someone that you guys can ping back and forth on and work together on stuff. If you're having a hard time, make sure you do that. You just have to avail yourself of all the resources that Codeup provides for you, because there's a reason why they're available. Don't look at something and think, oh, that's beneath me, or, oh, I'll just figure it out, or, oh, I read it once, I can remember. Make sure you're applying yourself and not shortchanging yourself. Otherwise, you won't get out of it as much as you could.
Absolutely.
Oh, and I agree with Jada. Find somebody. If there's somebody in your class that couldn't help, but they pick it up faster. I had somebody, I don't know if she's on here, but Laura, she had been doing development for years and years, and she was great at it. And I sat right next to her, and she helped me so much, So if you can find somebody who's willing to help you this in your class, it might be even better, because, they're going through it with you in real time, and,
especially if you're new. I did not have any prior tech experience in any way at all. I dabbled a little bit in SPSS a couple of years before going into Codeup. So if you're really new to this, like opening a terminal, you feel like a wizard, make sure that you can find somebody who has a little bit more experience or pick things up a little bit better so that you can tag along.
Absolutely. Thank you all. I wanted to be able to leave on like that high note, especially with a lot of our students watching, to be able to give them like that little push and some added motivation as well. So I really appreciate that. And thank you again for taking the time out today to really chat with me on, Black excellence in tech and talking a lot about the challenges and the positives. And to everyone else out there, thank you so much for tuning in. If you would like to, like Bridget said, if you're looking for a mentor, hit her up on LinkedIn. But if you have more questions or would like to know a little bit more about them, add them, follow them on LinkedIn. And again, thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.